Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode, before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is One Piece East Blue Saga, Logtown Arc, Episode 48, The Town of the Beginning and the End, Arrival at Logtown. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins with everyone in the Straw Hats arriving on Logtown, which is the island, and it's called the Town of Beginning and End because it is the town where Goldie Roger was both born and then later executed after he became the Pirate King and set off the Pirate Age. And within this episode, everybody kind of splits up to do their own things. So Sanji goes around ogling women. Usopp goes to a clearly scam store where the owner basically claims that everything in there came from pirates who had arrived from the Grand Line, and so everything in there had been to the Grand Line with pirates, which Usopp falls for hook, line, sinker. Then we have Zoro, Nami, we'll start with Nami. Nami running around shopping. And then Zoro is looking for new swords to replace his old ones and borrows some money from Nami. But as he's looking at the very high prices of swords, he does end up coming across a confrontation. And this is where we are introduced to Tashigi, who is being confronted by a couple of bandits or pirates whose captain had been captured by Smoker and her earlier. And she ends up fighting them, but as she fights them and wins, she loses her glasses. Zoro picks them up to give them to her, however, he ends up crushing them when he realizes that Tashigi basically looks how he would imagine Kuina to look when she grew up and is very thrown off by it. And then last but not least, we are following Luffy, and Luffy is looking for the execution platform where Goldie Roger was executed to be able to see where he died. And he runs off from the group before they even decide on a meetup place. And then he promptly gets lost, ends up at the port where Smoker, who has been informed of Luffy's $30 million bounty and the fact that he is said to be arriving at the island that day, goes to confront pirates, which he initially believes to be Luffy because he doesn't bother to look at the poster before he goes to hunt them. And then basically, after he fights them, he realizes they're way too weak to be worth $30 million bounty. Or not dollar, but berry bounty. And so Luffy, seeing him at the port, comes up and asks for directions to the platform. Smoker, not realizing who he is at this point, gives him some directions. And Luffy follows for a little while before once again becoming lost, but he does stumble upon a bar called Bar Gold Roger, and inside he meets the owner, Raoul, who says that he's planning to shut the bar down by his own choice, not because he went under. And he speaks to Luffy for a little while, telling him stories about Goldie Roger, and how he had met him when he was younger, and when he'd first opened the bar, some of Goldie Roger's big defeats of other pirates, and then when Luffy, of course, declares that he wants to be the Pirate King, Ral offers him a drink, but Luffy doesn't drink alcohol, so they share glasses of milk instead. And then Luffy leaves to go and try to find the platform, and Smoker then comes in, sees that Ral had another customer. Ral accuses him of being the reason that he's slow on business because Smoker keeps getting rid of all of the pirates, and basically Smoker says it's not my fault, all the pirates are cowards and weak nowadays. But Ral does think that maybe if there's more like Luffy out there, that it's worth keeping his bar open for a little while longer. Meanwhile, Luffy finally makes it to the execution platform, and we see a flashback or two of Roger, his execution, Smoker's memory of being present at the execution as a child. And overall, that is where this episode leaves off, with Luffy looking excitedly at the platform. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is now time to rank the episode, and as always, we'll be ranking first on the mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the score, followed by the personal ranking list, which uses entertainment value and opinion to determine the score. So starting with our mostly objective rank values, basically all of the values were on the characters. So first we have our single arc supporting character introduction, which was Raoul, the bar owner. And then we have our multi-arc supporting character introductions. Each were 3, where we are introduced to Smoker and Tashigi. And then this is what I'm considering the official introduction of Goldie Roger as a character. He's been mentioned before. He's been in the prologue since episode 1, but this is the first time we actually see flashbacks to him actually talking, moving, being a character in the flashbacks versus just somebody who's talked about a still image or the prologue. So I am counting this as his official introduction, as this is the first time we see him actually in flashbacks as what I would consider a legitimate character in this case. But all told, that does bring us to 10, and I didn't think that there were any negatives in this episode. And so I am going to consider this a 10 out of 10 episode. And of course, because it is the first within this new Logtown arc, it is in first place, the town of the beginning and the end, arrival at Logtown. And then we have my personal ranking for this episode. Now, entertainment value wise, I was pretty entertained by it. I mean, there was some comedic moments with Luffy getting lost, asking Smoker for directions, Smoker who didn't even bother to look at the wanted poster before leaving headquarters and therefore has no idea who Luffy is and manages to give him directions instead of capturing him, which would have ended the story pretty early. We have Zoro and his first interaction with Tashigi, which is going to become a running theme throughout his interactions with her, the fact that she looks like an adult Kuina, or how he would have imagined Kuina to grow up to be like, even the sword, wanting to be like a swordswoman and all of that. Usopp being taken for a fool, Nami doing her shopping, and not really caring that she's putting some of the shop owners out because the first shop she goes to, she buys nothing but tries everything on, and then in the second shop, she actually buys the clothing from them and is told about Smoker by the lady packing the bags. And then just generally, like Luffy running around. However, it is kind of the introduction to Logtown, introducing us to new characters. But because of that, the plot does seem... We do get some, like, world-building pieces, like Goldie Roger's flashbacks, his execution, Raoul and some of his stories, all of that. But it still feels like there's not a lot happening plot-wise. Like it's not quite a filler. It's not even quite set up, but it is kind of like we're being introduced to a new place, so everybody's separate doing their own things. Because everybody's separate, they only get like a few minutes each. And so it feels like we're not getting anywhere, if that makes sense. It's not as entertaining as it could be. It doesn't have as much importance as it otherwise could. Like introductions are important because they introduce things that are going to be important later. So obviously, like I said, it's not a setup or a filler episode to be like a negative, but it also isn't very entertaining. It isn't moving fast. There isn't a lot happening as far as progressing a plot because it's just introducing the beginning of a plot. I think that's where I wanted to get to. And as a result of that, I enjoyed the episode. I found it fun. I found it engaging of my attention. But ultimately it was slow, there wasn't a lot happening, and it's introducing things that will be more important later on. Therefore, I decided to give it a 6 out of 10 on the personal ranking, but it is in first place so far on the personal ranking as it is currently the only episode in this arc, which is the town of the beginning and the end, arrival at Logtown. Which brings us now to the saga rankings so far, and this is where we're going to be ranking each of the arcs within the saga against each other. And we start off with our Romance Dawn arc at 86.67% on our mostly objective list. And second on the mostly objective, we have Arlong Park arc at 76.67%. Orange Town arc third, 76%. Baretti arc 68.33%. Syrup Village arc 64%, and the Buggy Side Story arc regrettably at 55%. And the Logtown arc so far has 10 out of a possible 60 points. On our personal ranking side, unsurprisingly, we have the Buggy Side Story arc in first place because I have a strong bias towards Buggy. I think he's the best character, or one of the best characters in this anime. But either way, 90% first place on the personal ranking side. Then we have Arlong Park arc second at 76, followed by Orangetown arc 74%, Romance Dawn arc 66.67%, Baretti arc at 52.5%, and then Syrup Village arc currently in last place at 49%. Logtown arc is starting so-so at a 6 out of a possible 60. Then we have our series ranking so far, and this is where each of the sagas are going to be ranked against each other. And the East Blue Saga currently has a score of 34 out of a possible 80 on the mostly objective side. And then on the personal side, it currently has a score of 30 out of a possible 80 points. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked One Piece East Blue Saga Logtown Arc, Episode 48, The Town of the Beginning and the End, Arrival at Logtown. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.